Game Time live at the NBA Finals, presented by YouTube TV. A look at Jurassic Park outside Scotiabank Arena. These folks have had 48 hours to bask in the glow of a Game 1 victory and consider what might happen tonight in Game 2 with the Warriors down 0-1. Welcome inside as our coverage continues here of the 2019 NBA Finals. One of the heroes, Fred VanVleet, getting themselves ready to go for tonight's Game 2. Welcome in on the floor, as always. I'm Matt Weiner. Good to have you with us. Hall of Famer Grant Hill, NBA champion Steve Smith, Hall of Famer Charles Barkley, right over there. You know who's missing from this set, by the way? Our friend Larry. The Larry O'Brien Trophy. I've been doing the show for 10 years. I don't recall ever not having the Larry O'Brien Trophy right there. And do you know why the Larry O'Brien Trophy is not here? Customs. It did not get through customs.
Wow.
That's true. It hasn't made it through customs. Presumably, by the time somebody is crowned champion, it'll be wherever that happens.
They get the trophy clear. It's not the first 1 to 2 match, so they don't need it right now.
Don't need it yet.
We don't need it yet.
But it's a nice little set piece for us usually to have it right here.
I don't like it being here. I ain't gonna lie.
You don't like the trophy being here?
I do not.
You feel like it's mocking you?
No, because I'm not allowed to touch it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's so close, but you can't.
Yeah, you can't touch it. That's like an old rule for Stanley
I thought that was
Cup.
a hockey rule.
It's a hockey rule. That's an NBA rule. I would never touch the championship trophy. I didn't earn it.
Even though your career is over now, you feel like you still can't touch it?
Never touch it, brother.
You might get a 10-day or something and another opportunity? Or
Hey, Matt, that's not happening.
That's not happening, Matt. You gotta know. Hey, the key to being successful is knowing your limitations.
We had a lot of talk over the last couple of days about adjustments, obviously, for both teams. Some discussion about health as well. Kevin Durant, as you probably know, is not playing again here tonight in Game 2. Andre Iguodala says he will play. The Warriors say he will play, but he was obviously affected at the end of the fourth quarter. An MRI on his left leg was negative, but that's something to watch tonight when this game begins.
No, it is something to watch, particularly with, the limited bench play of Golden State, and obviously Durant being out. Iguodala is so important to this team and his health, his activity, his energy. Defensively on Leonard, maybe at times. I know Klay Thompson's had that matchup, but on the offensive side, that's what they're really going to need. He's a guy who has stepped up and has hit big shots. He was MVP in 2015. And obviously has had moments in the playoffs and trying to find more offensive production. You can't score if you don't have your legs underneath you. You don't have that confidence. But if he's healthy and he's going to suit up, you expect him to go out there and try to give his best.
We'll see what they change defensively, but they started him out on Kawhi Leonard, so obviously it's a huge matchup for Golden State.
Yeah, when you look at Andre Iguodala, especially in their schemes, Chuck, they like to switch a lot. But I was looking at Golden State. I didn't really understand how you come out and just start blitzing the guy from the beginning. I want to see interesting right now, what do they do? And I would start Draymond Green on Marc Gasol, because if you're going to switch, you have another defender.
Well, actually, I think this puts a monkey wrench in the Warriors' plan to what we talked about the other night, because if he's not healthy, he can't guard Kawhi Leonard one-on-one. But also, if they put him on Siakam, he can't guard him either with one bad leg. So that puts a monkey wrench in what we're talking about not blitzing Kawhi, but that really does bring up some interesting propositions for the Warriors. Like I said, we said, I don't know why because that's the only way Gasol, VanVleet, Lowry, those other guys get going when you double Kawhi. But if you don't have arguably your best defender, second best defender other than Draymond, I don't know how you do that.
Well, that's one big adjustment we'll find out about tonight for Golden State. The other one is transition defense, which Steve Kerr described as, quote, awful. After Game 1, they gave up 24 transition points. And that's one of those simple things, right? You just got to get back.
Well, listen, all these players are good players. You just can't say we're not going to stop the fast break. They got great players coming at you full speed also. Especially when you're the Warriors, one thing about when you shoot jumpers, when they miss, they're long, it's hard, and they're not in a position, I forget how, you want your guards, normally in the defensive structure, you want your guards back. But the way the Warriors play, their guards are always on the baseline, they're always moving, so they don't have any defensive structure to stop fast breaks. So that's a problem also.
Yeah, for sure. And let's look at this ego. Chuck, you said it best. When you talked about most of the time it's Draymond Green, the 4 guy is up the top. And you look at the speed right now, Pascal Siakam, Grant, I wouldn't want to be able to stop him. This kid can get out and run. And I think for Golden State, taking these long shots and not getting back, there's no communication right here. And I looked at Toronto. They just had a sense of urgency a little bit more than Golden State, especially on the break. I mean, Draymond makes this one. This is the one I would be really upset as a coaching staff. Draymond is yelling. No one picks him up on a made basket. You don't want to give up an easy bucket. And you can see Klay and all those guys not really running back. Steph is a guard, but he takes this shot. You got to get back, and you got to orchestrate the defense. These right here, you look at Draymond, he's in no man's land. You got 4 guys. And Chuck, what I love, watch Draymond's reaction after the ball goes to to Danny Green. He's upset, like, what are we doing? But it's tough.
And, you know, that's actually a perfect example of what we're talking about. It's easier said than done.
Right.
Especially the way the NBA is played today, because in our day, guys used to run to the basket. Now guys run to the three-point line. So you got Siakam or Leonard coming at you full speed, and you're like, oh, do I stop this ball or do I stop Danny Green?
Yeah.
Draymond actually played good defense in that situation, but they didn't have a thing for Danny Green in the corner. So, like I say, it's always good to say how you're going to stop things, but then it's different in live action.
All those 3-on-2 drills you guys did, and even I did in high school, they don't apply anymore because you can't be in the paint. They're going out to the three-point line now.
Well, that's true. But I think 3 things that happened in game 1, and certainly that Higo showed it. 1, bad offense. You know, you have bad offense out there, turning the ball over, bad shot selection. That leads to 16, 17 turnovers, 24 points off of those turnovers. Then you got to communicate when you get back. There was no communication. A couple times just, you know, somebody ran right down the middle as you showed and illustrated there. And then you have to have effort. And those 3 things I thought were lacking out there. Not to say you're going to stop them entirely, but it was just too much right there. It was an easy basket you're giving the team. You lose the game by 9 points. Yeah. You cut that down in half, it might be a different
I got a question for you, Smitty. How bad is your high school team if Matt Weiner's on it?
Bad.
I mean,
well, who said I played, first of all? There's a big difference between being on the team and actually playing.
Yeah. Oh, so you were on there for that grade point average?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. I wasn't the last guy on the bench, but I knew him pretty well.
Hey, Matt, as long as you can make them free throws and you get that grade point average, we got a place for you.
Oh, I never got in for the free throws, so you can't hit those from the bench. Raptors 10 of 13 on those fast break opportunities from the field, and that played a big role in their 50% shooting in this game as well. A potential change in their lineup tonight, OG Anunoby is probable for this game tonight to be activated. And remember, he has not played since April 9th. That was the last day of the regular season. Suffered an appendicitis, had to have an appendectomy. There were complications following it, and he's been working his way back since. That is another long, versatile defender they could throw at Golden State if he's available.
No question, Matt. And obviously, having been out that long, he's going to be rusty. We talked about DeMarcus Cousins being out for a period of time. He came back and played. Wasn't really quite himself on the offensive end. But Anunoby is a different type of player, defender, long, athletic. Usually when you come back from injury, your defense is ahead of your offense. They don't really need him for offense,
right.
But another body capable of guarding multiple players on the defensive end. And so if he can come back for game 2, that'll be huge.
Huge part of the atmosphere in here Toronto happens outside, as you know by now. Jared Greenberg is basically an honorary member of the Jurassic Park crew, and he filed this report.
Well, Matt, I've already been informed that the main viewing zone here in Jurassic Park is already full to capacity. So let's take you down the street here. Throughout parts of downtown, fans are already setting up in different zones. They had about 10,000 people for the game 1 of the NBA Finals. They're expecting about the same to be out here too. But it doesn't end right here at Jurassic Park. As we were telling you prior to Thursday's game, these viewing parties are being set up all over the country. In fact, 36 official ones that we know about are being set up for tonight. In Mississauga, which they're calling Jurassic Park West, which is just outside the city here, they got 20,000 fans in downtown for Thursday night and expecting a similar turnout for tonight. But it doesn't end there either. How about to the furthest point that you can drive north in Canada, Tuktoyaktuk. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Check out these fans here from the Arctic Ocean checking out Raptors in the 2019 NBA Finals. It's happening all over the place. In fact, First Ontario Centre has a capacity of just over 17,000 fans. In Hamilton, Ontario, they're opening the arena just so fans can pour in and watch the game on the Jumbotron. They say about 3.5 million people tuned in to Game 1 just from Canada. That number doesn't sound big. Let me put it in its proper perspective. That's 10% of the entire country's population watching the NBA Finals. As we go from Jurassic Park, where they're getting riled up here, they're expecting Flo Rida to come out on the stage in a bit. We go back inside to you guys.
All right, Jared, amazing support. Tuktoyaktuk, by the way, they the North. The folks in Toronto say we the North. They are 4,100 miles from here.
Wow.
Up in the Arctic Circle. That's a great question.
Hey,
Why?
Why? Because everybody confuses them. It's hilarious.
And this is a real thing, by the way.
It's a
You've
real
seen
thing.
it out in the street. People say hi, Grant, and hi, Steve, and now you're dressing alike.
Hey, just it goes to prove you, all ugly people look alike.
Did you get confused with anybody?
No. Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
No, you can't, man.
Stop lying.
The Commissioner, Adam Silver, standing by. He'll join us next as we continue our coverage of Game 2 from Toronto. Jurassic Park outside Scotiabank Arena. Did you guys walk around today or anything? It's beautiful.
I walked around.
It's
I walked around for about an hour today. You know I love it up here. It's my favorite city in the world.
Other than Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you usually finish the sentence with
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well, it's Toronto and Chicago in that particular order. Barcelona, Spain, Munich, Germany,
Okay.
and Leeds, Alabama.
Leeds, Alabama. Every bit as
you don't live in
cosmopolitan
neither
as
of
all
those
those other
That's
places.
our 5 biggest places in the world.
73rd NBA Finals, the very first finals outside of Canada. We welcome in the Commissioner, Adam Silver. Good to have you with us as always.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here.
The sort of symbolism is obvious, right? We've left the country for the first time for the NBA Finals. As a league, what's the significance of crossing over the border here?
The significance is almost precisely your point about the symbolism. We're a league now where 25% of our players were born outside the United States, and while Toronto is not all that far from New York or anywhere else, I think it's symbolic in that way that first finals outside the United States, and also to Charles's point about this city, it's a special place. I'm not going to rank it as a New Yorker, but it's about as multicultural a city and diverse city you can be in, and I think it's about as representative of the league of any city you could think of in North America.
Great host. It is really cosmopolitan and diverse, and great food, and just an interesting place to be. There are tons of eyeballs on this series, have been on the NBA playoffs, but as you know, overall TV ratings were down a little bit this year, and maybe that says more about conventional media than it does about how many folks are actually paying attention. The one thing we hear occasionally about young people in particular is that they aren't necessarily going to sit and watch an entire game. As Commissioner, how concerned do you get when TV ratings dip a bit?
There's an ebb and flow. Of course, I watch it closely. I mean, that's nothing new. I mean, as I've said before, part of it was LeBron moving out of the East. It's as straightforward as that 50% of television homes in the U.S. are on the East Coast. And so if you have a big star in the league, the math is, and that those games are on at 10:30 in the East instead of 8 o'clock, ratings are going to be down a bit. I mean, and they were down more on one network than they were on another. So it's something we monitor closely. I think the biggest issue, it isn't just the amount of time a young person will watch the game, but increasingly in the States, young people aren't subscribing to cable. Right. And look, whether it's NBA TV, TNT, or ESPN, you have to get cable. And even to watch those services on an app, you have to first subscribe to cable. So we're sort of at a crossroads here where, and I'm sure over time, our distribution will change so that for those people who want to just watch the NBA and don't want to elect to subscribe to a larger bundle of channels, they'll still be able to watch our games. So I feel great. I mean, the product has never looked better. The game on the floor, the interest has never been greater. We know that from all the social media support, from the amount of coverage of these games. So that'll work out over time.
One of the things you talked about, and me and Ernie been trying to talk to TNT about for years, and you kind of touched on it, starting the West Coast games earlier. You talked about it. I think it'd be great for the NBA to start a half an hour earlier personally, because that second game doesn't start at 10:45, 10:50. And if I'm on the East Coast, I might watch the first half, but after that I'm done. And you said most of the boxes are on the East Coast. How much are you considering starting the West Coast games earlier?
We are. We're thinking a lot about it. I mean, there's almost two negotiations I have to have. One is with the networks, and the other is with our teams, because I understand that we're a West Coast team, and so now we're playing at 8 and 10:30 in the East. So those 10:30 games, to your point, at 7:30, and I'd actually like to even consider moving a full hour early. But I recognize for those attendees of those games, getting from work through traffic, getting to the arenas might be difficult at 6:30, and also it's not as convenient for their viewers. But there's compromise there. Maybe it's a half hour, but to be balanced out as a national product. Because I know, and I'm home watching you guys, that hour is a big difference. Like if we start at 9:30, staying up till midnight, I think for most people, all right, that's still kind of late. But 1 in the morning changes it completely. And I think even psychologically, that hour. And by the way, you can track it. To Matt's question about ratings, I mean, we get them minute by minute. And you get to, in the East Coast, like around 11:15, it just starts dropping. 11:30, it just stops dropping.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why, Monday Night Football, plays at 9 o'clock. I mean, they're paying attention to that, a huge viewership for their prime time. I mean, they're just trying to maximize their ratings. So, and it's a compromise because it feels a little bit late in the East, but it's early in the West. So.
Adam, when you look at the tampering situation, you got front office, Doc Rivers, how do you guys as a league monitoring all this, and what's next for you guys from a league standpoint?
We don't monitor everything. We do the best we can. I mean, some situations are more high profile than others. I mean, the best analogy I can use is speeding, and that if you have a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, if you go 58, you're not getting a ticket. You're probably not getting a ticket at 63, maybe not even at 65. Maybe if you're going 65 and all the other traffic is moving 55, you'll stand out. Maybe if everybody's going 70, it's a little bit art and not science. I mean, it's context specific. I think in the case of everything that's going on with Kawhi, the time of year, free agency coming up, the Clippers, all the chatter, I think that was one we felt we had to address. But I know I've talked to coaches about it. We're not looking for it to be a trap, but I think essentially the rule is in this league that you shouldn't be talking directly about active players on other teams. And we lose out in certain cases. Obviously, when Magic was an executive, he did, and some people said to me, isn't that bad for the league that Magic Johnson can't speak out about players in this league, or Doc Rivers right now? And I said, on balance, yes, at the end of a game, if Doc is asked about a player in a post-game press conference, what do you think about a player in an opposing team? Sure, if he can say, yeah, he's an incredible athlete. But out of that context, we just don't want to see it.
Adam, you brought up free agency, and it feels like this year more than any other year, there's been more talk about free agency early in the season. Like go back to November, December, a lot of speculation about star players and maybe changing locations in the upcoming offseason. My question is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good question. I'd say on balance, we like people talking about us. I mean, if the choice was people weren't talking about what's happening in the NBA, I don't think that'd be a good thing. I think part of it is the reality of social media today. There's just going to be more chatter than when you guys were in the league. It's just the nature of things. I mean, we have such an incredibly large social media following. I'd say the other component, I think, different from the past is contracts are much shorter than when you guys played. I mean, the longest contract in the league is now 5 years. I mean, Magic Johnson had a 25-year contract. And so, 40% of this league will be free agents this summer. Wow. So there's a positive to that too. It allows teams to rebuild faster than they otherwise would. It creates more of a sense of urgency for players. If you're in a shorter contract, if you may be in a different situation the following year, there's more sense of urgency to win. But there is a downside to it. I'll say, people have asked me, does it overshadow the game? The only thing I can say is just going to television ratings data, the amount of highlights that get picked up. I mean, people still care the most about the games, and after the game, it's the highlights. I mean, everything else to me is on the periphery. So I think in some ways it could take away, but I mean, take this finals, for example. Obviously, there's two very high-profile players that can become free agents. I think it's an incredible finals, and people are very focused on the competition on the floor.
Speaking of one of those guys, Kawhi Leonard obviously led the Raptors here to the finals, and he did so after a regular season in which he sat out 22 games, most of those for a phrase that I vowed I would not say during the playoffs anymore, but load management. You've addressed this before. You guys lengthened the season, obviously, to give players more off days in between. How do you feel about the balance right now as things stand in terms of players sitting out these games?
Kawhi was a special situation this year because, to me, that was injury recovery. I mean, remember, he only played 9 games the prior season. There's not a player in this league who would make that trade-off to sit out 22 games, having lost almost a full season. And, if you look at in terms of load management, I mean, I think Steph Curry rested 1 game. Kevin Durant rested 1 game. I mean, this is, think of Steph. This is a team that over the past 4 finals has played almost more than an entire additional regular season in terms of number of games. So I think I think Kawhi we have to look at as a very unique situation. And then if you take him out of the picture, there's actually very little resting. I mean, most players don't believe in it. I mean, on the margins, there's a fair amount. We changed the rules so that to the extent there was resting, it wouldn't happen in high-profile national games. So I don't think it's a huge issue right now. Having said that, I think we got to pay attention to the science. And as I've said, there's nothing sacrosanct about an 82-game season. If somebody were to suggest that optimal number of games was less than 82, we're going to look at it, because think about, like, obviously, you know, if we thought there was a direct correlation between number of games and the kind of injuries that would shorten players' careers, we'd want to pay attention to that. I think fans care about that and teams care about that.
The elephant in the room in sports, not just the NBA, is gambling. How are we going to manage that? Because it's a slippery slope for players, it's a slippery slope for coaches, it's a slippery slope for referees. How big is that a concern going forward with all the new gambling situation?
It's a concern, but it's always been a concern. And I only say that a regulated, transparent framework is better than one where it's unregulated and you have no visibility into what's happening. Said differently, I mean, think of a stock market. If there's insider trading, at least there's a record of every one of those trades. And sophisticated programs, if they see aberrational behavior, all of a sudden somebody who doesn't typically buy stock is buying a ton of stock, and then there's some major transaction the next day, they investigate. They say, who is this person? What connection did he have to the company? You know, they interview him. I think it's the same case in sports. Right now, we know it's a multi-$100 billion illegal business in the United States. Zero transparency into who's making those bets and what's causing lines to move. In a legalized framework, and we have access to who's placing those bets, they're placing with the credit cards. You know, we can constantly be monitoring the data. I think to the extent that there's improper, illegal behavior, we have a much better chance of ferreting out than we do under the current system. So it's something we got to monitor really closely. I think I'm talking to the other leagues about it. Obviously, several different state legislatures are passing rules on it. I wish there was a consistent national framework for dealing with it rather than state by state. But I think on balance, we'll be better with it being legal and regulated than the current framework.
Okay. Thanks for being here as always. Congratulations on all this. This is a very cool setting for an NBA Finals.
Yeah,
Great
I just want to thank you guys. I've been watching you all season. I know you got a very long year as well, so, and especially for continuing your year through the finals here. So thank you very much.
I think Chuck's year ends tonight.
It does, but hey, listen, it's been another great year for me, man. I love my job, and the NBA's been great for me. The greatest thing ever happened to me was the basketball.
You want to do Game 3?
It's in San Francisco?
Yeah.
That'd be a no. That'd be a no.
All right, well, there's that.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Adam Silver, everybody, the commissioner of the NBA. That would be a no. You know, we can ask. We can always ask. Back with more coverage ahead of Game 2 from Toronto after this.